Hey everybody, Seton Claggett here at trisports.com world headquarters right here in Tucson, Arizona, and it is my absolute pleasure tonight to have Craig Alexander with me and everybody else. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Trisports and thanks for the tour earlier. Very impressive setup you've got here, and thanks to everybody for coming along. Those present live and those online.
Cool. So you're pretty much live in Sydney now.
Yeah.
And why in the heck are you here in the desert?
Good question. Well, I've come to, with my coaching business, Sensigo, we're running a training experience at Canyon Ranch Resort. So it's the first of its kind. So very much looking forward to the next few days. We've got a select few athletes and some media influencers, and we're just testing the facilities really. We've got another camp scheduled for here later in the year in September, but you know, it's just more of us getting to know the facility out there. Obviously, we as a company, we've run camps before, but not sort of out of one facility like this, which has some incredible facilities. And and I've never been to Tucson, so I'm looking forward to the next week here.
Wow, is this your first time in Tucson?
It is, absolutely, yeah.
So you haven't got to play in our playground before?
No, so I'm looking forward to. I hear all about Mount Lemmon and everything else. So I'm expecting to see.
I'm glad you're here because now I can say that pretty much every Ironman world champion is now trained in Tucson.
Yeah.
So now I can feel that. So I knew I was missing one. You're the one. So the topic tonight we're going to discuss is training past your prime and racing past your prime. So the entire 1,000 people here at the store are all shaking their heads. Yes, this applies to me. So.
I thought I was still in my prime.
Yeah. To me, it's a touchy subject, so I'm like, I'm still in my prime. What are you talking about, right? And so, you know, you started doing triathlons. How old were you when you started triathlon?
I was in my early 20s, 21.
21.
So I was still at college when I started full-time studying to be a physical therapist. So I didn't really start full-time training as such until probably mid-20s. So it's been over 2 decades now of what I would consider full-time training, proper training practices, which is a long time, but still involved and still love the sport. And I think it's the kind of sport that lends itself to being, you know, of the endurance nature, that lends itself to, you know, racing well into your 30s and 40s and beyond.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing I've been really impressed with your career is not only have you won the World Championship 3 times and many, many other races, but you're still racing at a really high level and still winning, you know. And how old are you now? 24, 25?
I wish, you know, 44 in a couple of months.
Yeah. So how are you able to do that?
Well, I think the main thing is, before we even get to the physical side, just the mental side. I love the sport and I'm still motivated to be involved. It's not hard for me to go out and train. It's what I love to do. So I think that's the first thing. Just where you are, what your why is, what your reason is, and I love the sport. I love to be fit and healthy. So I love the training aspect, but I'm also competitive and I love to race. And when I race, I like to race the best people. So I certainly don't race as often as I used to. My Kona days and my Ironman days are 3 or 4 years behind me, but I still love to race. So I mean, these days the schedule is typically 3 to 7 races a year, but Olympic distance up to half Ironman, and but certainly I touched on the mental, the physical aspect. The way I've trained, or the way I do train, has had to change over the last 2 or 3 years, probably from 39, 40 years of age onwards. I noticed my body changing, and not really from an endurance standpoint. As I said, the heart and lungs and cardiovascular, I still felt strong, but it was more the body, the muscles, the bones. That's where I saw the wear and tear starting to show, and also the recovery wasn't the same as it had been. And I wouldn't say it happened overnight, but it happened quite rapidly. I mean, obviously I won Kona the last time at 38, so I was still at quite a high level there, but certainly I think from 40 years of age, that physical decline and the recovery aspect changed noticeably very quickly for me.
Wow. So what kind of advice do you give people, you know, let me reverse that. When I look at people starting the sport, I think there's kind of there's a couple groups, 2 big groups. And one is the people that started out young and they, you know, like yourself, you know, I started when I was 12, right? right? So you kind of start and you build into the sport, and there's other ones that come in. You know, one of the gals works here, Pam. She started triathlon when she was 45.
Yeah.
You know, and so what advice do you give to those two groups?
Well, it's a lot of the same advice. You know, there's no secret to training. The principles of physiology are well known. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Everybody's a little different, not only in terms of their genetics and physiology, but in their training history and their life. The job they have, the stresses of family, that all impacts on the training. So you need to be mindful of all of that. And just be consistent with the training. You're not going to, you know, they say Rome wasn't built in a day. So I think the main principle of training is just that consistent approach and be patient. And I guess getting more specific and more technical, I think core strength and stability is advice I give, and I'm a huge advocate of core strength and stability, whether you're a first-timer or a seasoned professional, because I think anything that's based on repetitive movement, like endurance sports is, it's about efficiency of movement and good functional movement. So I just think work on your core strength and stability, be consistent with your training, and understand there's more than one way to do it. There's a lot of great coaches out there, and I think to be a great coach, you have the experience and you've seen the patterns and the fads that have come and gone in the sport, and you tend to know what works and what doesn't work. And I think you understand that everybody is different. So you can have two guys or girls of identical height and weight, but their genetics are a little different, so their physiology is going to be a little different. Take it one step further, people of identical physiology, but someone works, they're on their feet all day, somebody's job's at home. You know, just life stresses can impact the training as well. So I think the main thing is just be patient, be consistent, focus on your strength and stability, and get as much good advice as you can, and there's plenty out there.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of good advice out there from many sources. How do you find a trusted source, though? I mean, there's a lot of information out there, so how do you know what's good and what's bad?
I don't know. I think if you're new to the sport, I always encourage people to join local tri groups. I think not only the social aspect, which adds fun to it, but also you're tapping into an experience base and a network of people who have an extensive knowledge, hopefully, from years in the sport. So I don't think there's too many secrets. There's no magic bullet, but I think read online, and what you'll see is that, and if you speak to a professional athlete down to an accomplished age group athlete to a first timer, I think once again it's the same sort of repeatable things that come through that lead to successful outcomes, which is a consistency of training, knowing your body, staying injury free, staying healthy, which leads to consistent training. But I think if you're new to the sport, I would encourage you to go out and join a local master swim squad or a triathlon group or a cycling group. And you know, there's people there who have been in the sport a long time, and you know, you can tap into their knowledge base and their experience.
I think one of the things I hear repetitively, especially over the last few weeks, is just be consistent.
Yeah.
Just be consistent. You know, just get on your bike and just do some of the basic stuff. Get on your bike and ride. Go swim. Go run. That'll take care of 80%.
That's great advice. I mean, it's not sexy, is it? But that's, people want to hear what the magic is. What the magic is consistency. Over time, you do anything in repeatable cycles over time, you will improve from an endurance standpoint. And you know, I think you make a good point. You can get that first 70 or 80% of fitness just having a really basic program. Yeah. No doubt that those last little bits can come from marginal gains and experience and over time, but just working on the basic pillars of, you know, endurance, strength, speed, technique, recovery. If you do the right sort of thing at the right time, over time you will improve. And no doubt those last 5 or 10% can take a bit longer. It's like a lot of things. You know, like golf, you can shoot in the 80s very quickly, but to get down into the 70s can take a decade or a decade and a half, and you might never get there. And endurance sport's the same. You can get fit in. I think if you're new to the sport, you do the right sort of training, be consistent, your improvement will be on a steep part of a curve, and then you'll plateau out a little bit. And that's where you really need to stick with it, though. And you do a lot of training and a lot of time investment for marginal gains, but that's what the sport is. And I think you need to embrace the process of being patient. And you know, I love when you hear, you know, the overnight sensation who's been training for 2 decades behind the scenes. So as I said, there's no real secrets. The great coaches, I think, don't just have the knowledge and the science, they have the experience. They've seen what's worked over time, and they've seen and worked with a lot of different people. So they know how to finesse it for each individual. And I think that's the real secret in not just having the knowledge, but how you implement it in each individual situation. And not the athlete moulding to the training, but the training moulding to the athlete with whatever their life is and what the stresses of their life are and what their goals are, what their training history is. As I said, it's not sexy and people want to know what the secret is. The secret is get up and do the same thing over and again.
Yes. So that's the training part of it. What do you do on the recovery side? You're 44 years young now. What has kind of changed over, especially the last 4 years, as far as recovery?
Well, a lot of things. I think my body's changed, no doubt, but also my focus. Triathlon's not my day-to-day priority, or racing. World Championships is not my day-to-day priority like it used to be. And I have 3 children, and I often skip massages and don't get in the gym and do all the things that I used to do. But I think there's a lot of things you can do to enhance recovery. The main 2 things, I think, are eat well and sleep well, which doesn't really cost anything. It's just getting the right amount of sleep and eating the right way, I think, is the foundation and the cornerstone of great recovery. And then there's a lot of things over and above that you can do. Body work, massage, a good strength and conditioning routine in the gym. As I said, I think if you're functional and your technique's good and you're moving functionally the right way, not only are you going to perform better, but you're going to be more injury resistant as well, and it's going to help your recovery. So, and there's a lot of things, compression boots, ice baths, but I think it all starts with eating the right things at the right time and sleeping in the right amounts, and that's a good, I think, foundation for bringing in a lot of other practices. I know you have to make it a priority if you are trying to qualify and racing Kona, for example, and you've got those long and hard training days. The sum of the whole training is only going to be as good as each individual day and how you recover between days and between sessions. So, fueling the right way during the long run and hydrating the right way during the long run and immediately afterwards is important. So it starts immediately, and it starts before the workout, continues during, and something that should be a 24/7 focus. I know for me, as I said, my body didn't recover from workouts after 39, 40 like it used to. So at that point, I probably should have been doing more massage, more time in the gym, and if I still was racing Kona, I would be. So it depends on what your life circumstances are and what your priorities are, but there's a lot of things you can do to enhance the way you back up session after session, day after day, week after week, month after month, and that's what we're talking about. I mean, great training practice is not how much you do this week, it's how much you do in the whole build-up, the accumulation of work. And I mean, the way the triathlon landscape is now, if you're trying to qualify for races, you almost have a 12 or 18 month calendar, right? You're looking at maybe doing Kona or Chattanooga, you're looking at qualifying 6, 12, sometimes even 12 months out. So you will have an 18-month schedule that you've written for yourself. And at the end of that, your successful phase is going to be based on that whole 18-month period, not a couple of good training blocks, but it's the consistency over time, and a lot of that is your recovery. And I think that starts with sleeping right and eating right.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about San Diego. A lot of people know about it, a lot of people don't. And so I think it's interesting. I've seen several top-tier athletes, whether you, Andy Potts, Hillary Biscay, putting on camps and getting involved and giving back to the sport, which, for someone who's been involved with the sport since I was a little kid, 12 years old, it's really special, and all of you have a ton of knowledge, and it's really great for me to see this coming back into the sport. So you started at San Diego. What's the goal? What are you doing?
Yeah, it was really, I guess, the brainchild of myself and my manager, Franco. We were sitting around and we thought, we have accumulatively, we've been in the sport a long time, the two of us, and I've come into contact with a lot of great coaches, a lot of great mentors, And the idea was just to try and group as many of them together as possible. So people I'd either worked with who had an influence on my career, or coaches that I'd admired from afar who I thought shared a similar philosophy in training to what I did. And so that was the goal, just bring together a team of people and make that team available to all athletes if they were interested, whether it be through camps and clinics, an online community or personalised training. So that's what we've tried to do. We haven't gone over the top with advertising. We wanted to start slow and build up. And the name just came about really. Sans is French for without, so it means without ego. And you know, Frank, I always thought that through my career I would race with ego, but when I made great advances in I guess performance, I was able to take ego out of it and get advice from people, even if it was hard to hear, even if it was criticism or being critiqued. I was willing to do that to try and improve. So that's where the name for the company came from. And yeah, I'm fortunate I've been able to corral a great group of people, great coaches, and you know, we've probably only been around 3 or 4 years now, but we've put on a few camps and we're looking to expand as I race less and I'm more available to travel around. Yeah, we just want to enhance people's training and racing experience. That's our goal. And as I said, we're not going over the top with advertising, but I think if we run a few good camps and we've got an online community going, if we do the right thing, people will know about us and we'll have all the interest we can handle. So that's where we're at the moment. We've got this one this weekend at Canyon Ranch, and next weekend we're going down to South America, to Colombia down there. So we've had one in Brazil, in Sao Paulo a few years ago now, but we're going back, and you know, triathlon really seems to be exploding in South America. So that's one area we want to target, and yeah, we'll see where it leads. But I mean, some of the coaches that I've got, coaches who have coached Olympic champions in triathlon, world champions. But what I think is amazing about them is they've also worked with beginners predominantly. So they've worked with the full spectrum of athletes and know, once again, it's not just having the knowledge, it's about how you implement it for whether it's someone who's coming to the sport and says, look, I just want to run a 5K, or someone who says I want to qualify for Kona, or someone who says I want to win a gold medal. So yeah, we're very lucky. We've got a great group of coaches, and yeah, we're still sort of in the early stages though, so, but looking really to push on at this stage and do some great things all around the place.
So you have your professional career as a triathlete, you have Seton going on, and you also have your family, you have 3 kids.
Yes, that's the main thing going on.
That's the main thing going on. So tell us a little bit about the work-life balance of having the 3 little ones rule the roost.
It's tough. It's tough. Especially now they're getting older. Our eldest just started high school this year. I mean, when they were younger, it was a lot easier for me because Neri and I, we could go anywhere and take the kids. And for the longest time, we would base in the Northern Hemisphere during the Southern Hemisphere winter. We'd come up for summer. Now the kids are getting older, they've got their own stuff going on, their own schedules to keep, and so that means I have to travel more on my own, which I don't like. It's harder for me. But you know, it's a better routine for the kids. So it's a tough balance. I'm sure everyone here knows what I'm talking about. You have your professional goals and your personal goals in life, and juggling everything can be hard. And I think you need to be very clear. Well, for me personally, I guess it has been an extension of the professional career, just being clear on what the objectives are with the business. And you know, I still have 17 or 18 amazing sponsors and companies that I work with. So a lot of my time's devoted there as well, and they were gracious enough during the height of my career just to let me prepare and race world championships. And you know, I want to give a lot back to them. I want to leverage the relationship other ways, which means travelling around, going to expos, trade shows, just being more available. So it is a tough balance, and it's one I struggle with. I'm not going to sit here and say I've got it dialed in. I miss sitting there and the kids a lot. I'm used to travelling with the family, so the last 2 years it's been a lot different to that. And I think for me personally, I've almost needed to be more organised, because I was always very organised and scheduled with the racing and the training, and the family, we were always together, so there was always plenty of time, family time. And now that I'm still racing and really we're trying to launch this business and I have the kids, you know, family is obviously the main priority for me. it's almost I have to be even more organised than ever. And I get a little insight into everybody's world who has a full-time job and a family and wants to race. I know a lot of the amateurs I've worked with, with the training, they're often more scheduled and more organised than a lot of the pros that I've trained with. Because, professionals have all day to train, but if you have a full-time job, it's not negotiable. You have to get up and get that training done. Before the kids get up, you want to spend time with the kids, and then you've obviously got work. So, I feel like I'm slotting more into that sort of category now, and it's a challenge, and I haven't got it worked out, but I'm getting there. It's about planning in advance. I don't race as often because I only want to race. For me, it's not about winning, but it's about performing at a high level. So I only want to race when I know my training is going to allow me to do that. And with all the travel and family, it's not as often as it used to be. So it might be 3 or 4 or 5 races a year. And I think I can be happy with that, so long as the performances are good at each of those. Finding time to nurture and grow the business. And the priority is family, so that's the main thing. I want to be there for a lot of the kids' activities. And I think when I'm at home, I'm totally immersed in that. I go to everything that I can for the kids. I almost drive them nuts. I'm there too much. So I wouldn't say they look forward to Dad going away, but I know my wife does. She's watching Love You, Honey. I drive everyone crazy when I'm there the whole time, but it's about just finding a balance, like anything. And a lot of that's trial and error too. Doing it a certain way, then tweaking it, finessing it, finding out what works for you. And everybody's different. Everybody's different. There's no one size fits all. I guess it's like fitting a bike to someone who comes in here, or a wetsuit, depending on someone's shoulder flexibility and their level. It's not a one size fits all. So I think it's the same with finding a good life balance as well.
Yeah. Cool. So let's see. You said you have 18 sponsors.
Roughly, give or take.
Give or take. That's a big sponsor list. On the bike, you have Margot on 18. Shimano, Canyon Ranch is now on board. 2 times you. Newton,
Road ID, Oakley.
Yeah.
Tia, Hot Shot.
So let's talk a little bit about Hot Shot, because Hot Shot is this new product which you may or may not have heard of yet, but it's kind of becoming all the rage, and they kind of made their rollout, I guess, at Kona last year.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate enough to be one of the only places you can buy it.
Yeah. And
we're the only place that you can get it sent international.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is kind of a big deal. So, it's one of these things, like sometimes there's gimmicky products that come out, and, I haven't put myself in the pain cave deep enough to try this stuff to say, hey, this works. But we've had camps here in Tucson, and it's been hot recently. It's been like 90 degrees Fahrenheit here. 92, 95. It's been pretty warm, and these people coming from the East Coast have suffered a little bit. But, I've asked them, we had discussions about Hot Shot, and a couple of the people emphatically raised their hand, jumping up and down, like, I was cramping, I took this stuff, my problem was solved. So, I'm like, well, that's good enough for me. Like, here's real-world examples. So, talk a little bit about what it is.
Well, first off the bat, I was never a huge cramper in my career. And particularly later in my career, the times I did cramp were at times I wouldn't have thought. Like the last year I did Kona, I cramped in the swim. I got hit in the calf and I cramped. And I had a few situations like that. I remember doing the Rev 3 race at Crowie at Connecticut one year. The water was warm, but it was cold in the morning. And coming out of the swim, I cramped as well. So I always thought there was another mechanism of cramping. And as I said right off the top, my college degree was in physical therapy, and I remember, it seems like a lifetime ago, it was 20 odd years ago I was studying, but there was always thought to be another mechanism of cramping that wasn't understood, a neural mechanism. And I just read about Hot Shot, and I read about Dr. Ron McKinnon, who he was the founder, he was the inventor of the product. And he's not just anybody, he's a Nobel Prize winning scientist who happens to be an avid endurance athlete as well. And it was sort of born out of necessity. He was training for a 50-mile ocean ski paddling race, and he trained 6 or 8 months for it, so he was well conditioned. And he cramped up early in his forearms, and of course, being a paddler, very important, not only for propelling yourself forward, but for balance. And he tipped and nearly drowned. He was in the water, and so after that episode, he thought, well, I'm a neurobiologist, this is in my wheelhouse, maybe I should look into this. And that's how I sort of came upon the product. I was reading about how he came upon it, how he came to develop it. And it made sense to me, knowing the science behind it, having studied it, and trialling it myself. And I will say, it was past my peak racing years. But I believed in the ride, I believed in the science behind it, and then working with a lot of athletes and seeing, like you say, that the anecdotal evidence of people who used it and how it dramatically changed their outcome. I mean, cramping is one of the few things, there's few things more debilitating. When you cramp, your day's almost over. Nothing can derail you as quickly as a cramp. So working with some of the athletes that we worked with and seeing the effect it had on particularly athletes who were prone to cramping. And I ran my own little studies. There was a professional athlete who I used to race, used to cramp a lot, and I gave him some to try, which I shouldn't have, because he stopped cramping and started winning everything. But you see things like that, and like you say, I mean, I think between us, we've been around the sport long enough, you see every gimmick, but you can't ignore the real breakthroughs either. I think you can't get so cynical that you ignore the real breakthroughs. And I just liked Rod's story. Dr. Rod McKinnon is not a guy about making money. He loves science. He loves two things in life, science and paddling, that's it. And I was fortunate enough to go to the Rockefeller Institute in New York. He took me on a tour of his research laboratory, which is one of the best in the world. And I mean, they were doing world-leading research into asthma and all sorts of things. Just incredible opportunity to go through and get a tour from Rod. But that's the calibre of mind that developed this. And yeah, I think, when I started in the mid-90s, it was all about old school, train hard, but eventually that science and technology infiltrates everything in life, whether it be business, your personal life with phones and computers. That filters into sport as well, and we see it with the technology in bicycles, with power meters, the way we collect and gather data now. And I think you see it also in training practices in the science of nutrition, and it's every aspect of life, so I don't think you can ignore it. And I mean, that's, as I said, it was my background. I was a physical therapist, so I majored in science, in a science degree, physiology and anatomy, doing a science degree. So the science, when I just read about it, I guess the first thing that intrigued me was the science behind it and Rod's story and how he developed it. And now having seen firsthand how it's impacted on a lot of athletes who are still racing in Kona and those racing in hot climates, those who have been prone to cramping, I believe in it. I do believe in it, and I just believe in Rod and the science behind it.
Cool. Yeah, very interesting when a new product like this comes out.
Yeah.
Like we have tens of thousands of products here, and there's a few that I raise my hand. I'm like, this one right here.
Yeah.
I still need to put myself personally through the ringer to see if this stuff works, but there's enough people like raising their hand saying this stuff works. So,
yeah.
I will give a shameless plug for this. If you're interested in buying some Hot Shot tonight till midnight, whatever midnight is, I don't know when midnight is where you are, but we're doing 20% off. Use Canyon Ranch as the discount code at checkout, and you get 20% off and give it a try. If you're a cramper,
You've got nothing to lose.
you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I was racing the Lake Placid one year, and I saw this guy. I'm a cramper, and I saw this guy cramp up, and he screamed, but the scream was the bloody murder of him realizing Kona just left him.
Yeah.
Like we were in Kona places, and he was cursing himself, like he was just stuck, and it was a sad thing to see.
Well, if you spend so much effort and time on trying to train and qualify, I mean, you've got to run out every ground ball. And yeah, if you're a cramp, it's definitely worth looking into.
Yeah. So, with that, I could talk to Craig all night. He's one of the smartest guys in the sport, and so a lot of knowledge there. But we've got to wrap this up. But we're going to have some Q&A. So, from the studio audience, any questions out there?
I have a question as you get older, and I've gotten a lot older. As far as strength training goes in the gym, either the offset, what do you actually do in the gym other than Pilates and that type of thing?
I'm certainly no expert, but I've had experts help me, and I think one of the things you lose as you get old, after 35, is your strength. Men lose it at 35. I think ladies can hold it a little longer, but the men tend to lose it. I think it's around 35. And, you know, there are a lot of exercises that you can do in the gym. I mean, initially my gym routine was the core stability stuff that I talked about. A lot of single leg, hip bridging, Swiss ball, and a lot of those exercises are activation of smaller muscles around the pelvis, around your core. Some of them are strengthening, but a lot of those muscles is just a matter of being able to send messages from your brain to turn them on. And I mean, this is where you generate all your power from, so for all three disciplines. But later on, there's definitely some weight exercises you can do that translate very well. And the goal is to do exercises in the gym where the strength gains transfer well to what you want to do. So it's no use just going in and bench pressing, because you'll get strong at bench pressing, but does that transfer into what you're trying to do? So there are exercises that do. For instance, squats, incline leg press, lunges. There's lots of exercises in the gym where, with a proper routine, that those strength gains transfer into the disciplines, and it's worth doing. You know, I think you can never neglect actual specific strength on the bike run and in the pool. You still need to keep those sessions up, but I think it's a good adjunct to that for sure. And the thing about it too is I think, you know, in a 45 or 60 minute gym routine, there's good strength gains you can get, good leg performance, so it's good time effective training as well. But you should Google them. I saw a lot of different people, most notably Dave Scott. I mean, I was lucky, I was based in Boulder, Dave was in Boulder. You know, I had one in Kona, he had one in Kona. We had some similarities, but he also raced into his... Well, he retired at 35, but came back as a 40-year-old and finished second, and retired again, and I think came back as a 42 or 43-year-old and finished fifth. So, you know, I tapped into his, and he's a wealth of knowledge and has an amazing background in science and physiology as well. So he was able to really... He crafted my strength and conditioning routine for a few years, and last year when I was in Boulder, I used Erin Carson at Rally Sport. She was amazing. Once again, just very specific exercises, not just generic strength and conditioning, but exercises that were really good, a lot of single leg work and exercises that were really I felt they transferred well into those disciplines. So worth looking into, I think, time effective training and very beneficial.
Craig, what do you think of the role of functional stretching as you get older? I mean, as you get older, you're not as flexible.
Yeah.
So the question was functional stretching. What do you do?
What's the role of functional stretching? I was never a big stretcher in terms of like static stretching. I would always, if I went to the pool or the track, I would just start easy, doing the motion that you're going to do, but just start easy to get the muscles warm, and then gradually increase the intensity to increase that range of motion, so you didn't just get to the track and go straight into max efforts. You know, that's where I think the gym is good as well, because a lot of the exercises I did, for instance, a lunge, that's taking your muscles through range under load, which is exactly what happens in running and cycling. They're under load, so there's that specificity, and that's a big thing. I mean, the stimulus that you apply to a muscle or to anything, you'll get an adaptation, a change, but the question is how does it relate to what you're actually trying to achieve? So I always felt stretching those muscles or taking them through range under load was the way to go. So I would do sort of functional stretching in the gym under load.
So you touched on it a little bit, but could you talk about the change in technology from like when you started to today, and kind of your feelings about training with power on the bike, and then the new thing is power on the run?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, when I started, there were heart rate monitors. I was just a poor little uni student, so I never had one, which was a good thing because I learned to train to feel. And a lot of the athletes I work with, I still prescribe RPE or perceived exertion as the effort indicator. I think we all know what a max effort feels like. If I said to you, I want you to do 3 times 3 minutes max, I mean, each athlete should know what that means. If I was to say we're going to do 5 by 5 minutes hard, yeah, that's a little different. That's not max, because that's 25 minutes of total load, but it's at or above, slightly above threshold. So that's slightly different to max. If I were to tell you to go for an easy run or an easy ride, I think an athlete should know what that means as well. So, you know, I'm glad I learned to do it to feel. That being said, I don't think you can ignore the technology, and I think heart rate monitors and power meters can help you be very accountable, especially with time. Every second within a session can be accounted for now, what training zone you're supposed to be in. So I think so long as the person interpreting the data, if it's you or a coach, understands what they're seeing and what your levels are, how that relates to you and your training zones, I think it's a great way to train. I know I trained with a power meter for the first time in 2007 when I started doing Ironman, and it helped a lot. It helped a lot. I think I never really was a slave to the numbers though. Like in a race, I wouldn't stop trying to bridge across to the front group just because I saw a certain number. I knew what that number meant over threshold, and maybe I potentially haven't got a lot of time in this zone, but I still raced mostly to feel. I think there's a huge place for it though, because what we're talking about is what's happening in the body, and we're talking about delivering oxygen to the muscles, right, so that you can sustain an effort for a long period of time. So having that knowledge is very important, knowing how to use the knowledge. It's not just having it, having all the gadgets, but it's interpreting the data and what it means in terms of you and personally with your training zones and moving forward, how you're going to implement that into your training to improve, because we're talking about getting quicker. So I think there's a huge place for it, no doubt. You just got to know what you're looking at and what you're seeing and how to use it. As far as running with power, I think we don't completely understand how to use it yet, like when cycling with power first came in. But I think it's going to be huge. Because once again, it's just measuring effort. It's measuring output. And, you know, I think in my career I did 12 Ironmans in total. And I don't think I ever ran a good marathon at the end. I mean, I ran a good one. I'm not saying I never ran a good one, but I perceive a good marathon to be sort of an even split, which is managing your effort and your output. Same on the bike. You don't want to go through the first 56 miles in 2:05 and then the second 56 in 2:45. That's not the way to do it. You know, same if you're going to ride around 4:30. Hopefully you ride something like a 4:13, a 2:13 and then a 2:17, something like that. So you're managing your output. I think running with power can help us do that. And I think that there's a benefit not only in the physiology of, say for instance, you're working with an athlete, you put a run power meter on them and they do a track session. You can see exactly in that track session where the energy output or the expenditure goes high and the output sort of diminishes. So I think what it can help determine though is it a cardiovascular deficiency there? Is it a fitness thing? So do we need to work on more training, or is it a biomechanical thing? That's where I think run power is a little different. I think it gives more insights into the technical aspect. Cycling is very technical as well, but your foot is locked into the pedal. Hopefully you're anchored on the seat. You've had a good bike fit, and there's less scope for your body to move around, hopefully. Running, your body can go anywhere as you fatigue, and you see that with people's hips. And so I think what you can see at a certain point in a session is when that energy expenditure goes right up and people get very inefficient. So for the same pace, all of a sudden they're expending way more energy. I think the power numbers with running can help you determine, well, is that a fitness? Do I need to prescribe better training? Is that a cardiovascular deficiency, or is that a biomechanical thing? Once again though, it's still information, and it's only as good as the person who sees it and recognises it. But the little bit of experimenting I've done with a run power meter, it is very interesting. You know, you can take yourself and do say a 1 mile or a 1K repeat on the track, and then change something with your technique and do it again, and see how your power number is different. Also at different stages of your fitness, of a preparation leading up to a race. You can go at the same pace but see that power number go down, which is hopefully what you want to see. That you're actually going at the pace you want to go at for less energy expenditure, so you're getting more efficient and fitter. So I think definitely there's scope, but I think we're still understanding how to use them. But it's like all technologies. Yeah, I think they're useful. I don't think you can just say, I'm old school, I'm going to ignore it, because I think certainly if you're pressed for time, this technology can help you be much more efficient, time efficient with your training.
Seeing that you're an old man now, out of the swim, bike, and run, is there one more that you feel like age has deteriorated the speed of one's strength?
Absolutely run. Absolutely the run. And just I don't run as much. Certainly when I get going, I can still see, every now and again I take my daughter to these track meets and they have an old man's race and I jump in. And some of the times have been decent that I've been able to get down to. So, but yeah, I can't walk the next day. So obviously the recovery aspect is not as good. But you know, I think it's a couple of things. There's the physical, what happens, but also the mental. I think the thing I had trouble letting go of was not being able to train the same way. And it wasn't an ego thing, I just liked to train. And I remember Dave Scott saying to me, you've got to back this off, you've got to back that off, you've got to do less. And I should have listened because that was the right thing to do and the smart thing to do. And there were sessions that I was meant to cut short that I didn't. I just liked to train. So it wasn't that I was disregarding his advice or input, I just liked to train. That was part of the enjoyment for me. So I think when I mentally appreciated that if I still wanted to race and race at a high level, okay, it is about performance now, it's just about the fun of training. I do need to do it smarter. So I did back the run mileage off and didn't train as hard as often. And I don't think you need to when you've got a large base and a good foundation of fitness. I'm talking years or decades. I don't think you need to as those intense sessions as often. And what I've noticed, I actually started swimming more and biking a little more, and I think I'm swimming and biking as well as ever. I'm swimming 1, sometimes 2 sessions more a week than I used to. I typically used to swim 3 or 4 times a week. Now I'm doing 5 sessions a week some weeks. So, and in the pool, I think the times are very similar. And I think there are benefits to running less too. When you run less, you're not as light. I think I still hold decent power on the bike. You know, the one thing I noticed training for Kona, it was a fine balance because you've got to run a marathon. So you have to do the mileage that will enable you to do it the way you want to do it. And when you lose weight, which comes with volume, I had trouble keeping strength on the bike. And that's always the, I guess, the balance that you're trying to find and that every athlete battles with. So giving up a bit of the run mileage has helped though, I think, with cycling. And I certainly don't do any more riding than I used to, but I feel my power's as good. I probably do less riding, more swimming, but I just think when you run, the damage that you do, those micro tears to the muscles, particularly on long runs and hard runs, the recovery takes a lot longer as you get older, and it just eats into the other 2 disciplines as well. So, yeah, I've had to sort of park a lot of that extra run mileage. And I mean, these days I would run, I think I'd average 50 to 60 kilometres a week when I'm training consistently, so say 40 miles, which is a lot different to the 70 or 80 I would try and do in an Ironman block. Yeah, but throw in that extra swim, and I don't feel as I'm as light as I used to be. But yeah, I've parked that run mileage, and rather than, once again, it's a mental shift. Rather than look at what I've lost, I try and think of what I've gained. Well, I can swim an extra session or 2 and get that cardiovascular benefit. And I will say I probably do as many bike sessions, but I don't do anywhere near as much volume. So I try and do more indoors on the ergo. So harder sessions, strength efforts or threshold efforts, and I think that's helped. So yeah, certainly not as many long rides. No, I'm only doing half Ironman racing now, no Ironman, so nowhere near the bike volume either. But the same number of bike sessions a week or thereabouts. But certainly a lot more on the indoor ergo and trying to keep the quality up on the indoor bikes. So that's probably been the main change.
One more question from this audience, and we're going to go to Facebook.
Does age play a factor in how you would taper? And I don't mean 30 to 40, I mean 30 to 65.
That's a great question, and a very hard question to answer, because I think at any age tapering is a very individual thing. Once again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You know, I struggled for a long time to work out what a good taper for me was. If I did too much, I would be tired. If I didn't do enough, I'd feel lethargic anyway. I would taper differently for a short, explosive race, much differently than I would for Ironman. So it's a hard question, but I do think you have to be careful as you get older, because if you do the wrong sort of session, yeah, it can stay in your legs and in your body a lot longer. So when I was doing those Formula 1 style races that we used to do back in Australia 20 years ago, I would drop the volume down, but I'd still keep some high intensity up there. in the last 4 or 5 days. Olympic distance, I used to like to keep a little volume in for the Olympic distance, but if I do something longer within the last week, it would be low intensity. But I would touch that race pace a couple of times in that last week. A half Ironman, I would only taper ever for 7 days, and similar to my half Ironman taper was very similar to my Olympic distance taper. Ironman, I'd have a 2-week taper, because I think it's a long day, obviously, and you want to be fresh. It's not about having the engine firing on 8 cylinders as soon as the gun goes off. Although in Coney, I guess a lot of the races you do need to do that because the swim's so quick, you want to get in that front group. But certainly a lot more crucial in the shorter races to be explosive right from the gun. So you've got to be properly warmed up on race day and properly tapered and warmed up, I guess, that last week. So it's important, but I think you just need to try a few different things. I wouldn't go do crazy volume, but I don't think volume hurts you if it's lower intensity. If it's in that really low training zone, and if that's what your body's used to. I'm a big believer in your body gets used to certain things, and it's even with nutrition. I mean, I think there's a good analogy there with nutrition and tapering. Not everyone's the same, and I never really did anything too different in race week with nutrition either. I mean, whatever I would eat to fuel my body during heavy training, typically what I'd eat before a race. What I'd eat the night before a big brick session is what I'd eat before an Ironman. Obviously, your calorie intake in that week leading up is going to be less. And I was never really one to monitor it, but if I was training less, I'd never be as hungry. And, on the nutrition front, not wanting to digress, but I'd focus on things like salt intake late, being hydrated, which are things you really should be focusing on all the time if you're training hard. But I think there's more of a focus on that in race week. But, I would just say try a few different tapers. If you keep a training log, I would go back and look at different races where you've raced well and what were the things you did in the last 7 to 10 days or 2 weeks before those races. I think that's a good starting point.
Cool. All right, Steph.
All right, so shout outs to Mike, Rod, and Ryan. And the first question from Daniel was, how soon should you do a brick workout before a race?
That's a great question, Daniel. I think I always started with, in the build-up to a race, I'd start with endurance and strength. And obviously you hear people talk about periodization of training. I'd start with endurance and strength, like a sort of a focus on that, and then go into a bit more speed threshold work. I think the brick sessions for me would come a bit later, in that more specific phase. And there's no question running off the bike is different to running. It's an acquired skill and a skill that you can train. And so the brick session has benefits in that specificity of training, but it also has benefits. I think it's the one session that most closely simulates the race, so it's a good session to practice your race nutrition in as well. The brick session, whatever event you're training for, is going to closely simulate the race in terms of hopefully duration and intensity built into it. So that's a good session to test your brick, your nutrition. But I mean, for me, I would be doing brick sessions. I'd start them 6 weeks out. I think with Ironman you have to be very careful because some brick sessions can be exhausting and intensive. And once again, it all comes back to, with any training program, that consistency that we talked about. You don't want to do a brick session that's so hard you can't train effectively for the next 3 or 4 days after it. So, I mean, the underlying principle of all effective training, I think, is that consistency. But I would say do your bricks 6 or 8 weeks out, and it also depends on your history in the sport. If you have an extensive training and racing history, you've done a lot of Ironmans and halves, even sprint distance, you probably can bring it in later, 4 to 6 weeks out. Because I think once you learn to run off the bike effectively, you always have that there once you get fit and you train it again. So I would just be careful not to do it right too early, like 2 or 3 months. 2 months out's perfect, I think, for an Ironman or a half. You can do some effective brick sessions, and that's a good time to do it because if you're training right, if you're building up strength, endurance, and speed in the early part of your preparation, and that's the perfect time then to incorporate a brick in and get very specific in terms of your durations and your intensities and the blending of the sessions leading into your race.
Great. All right. Ryan asks, where do you see the advantages and disadvantages of added muscle mass versus weight gain? Ryan sees a lot of plans pushing weight training, but isn't staying lean just as important?
I'm no nutritionist, I'm no expert in any of this. I can only speak for myself. Lean muscle mass is important. I mean, anything that you carry is something you have to carry, but if it's contributing to forward motion, then it's helpful. And, you know, I think with the right sort of strength and conditioning program, it's not just about adding mass and getting bigger. I think the right sort in terms of the number of sets and the number of repetitions, and at the time you do it too, it's not just about building muscle mass. So it's getting the right advice in the style of strength and conditioning, the right sort of session, and the right time to do it as well. And I think anyone who's trained for an Ironman or even a half Ironman or any sort of consistent training program will tell you that your body will find its own equilibrium in a good way. I remember when I did Ironman the first time, I was going over to Kona in 2007, and a former champion there saw me, and she said, "Oh, you're too light. You're too light, you'll never do well there." And I'd never met her. That was the first thing she said to me, and I thought, well, this is the only body I've got. I can't worry about am I too heavy, am I too light. I think I've prescribed the right amount of training. I've done it at the right time. My lead-up form was good. That's all I can do. But to answer Ryan's question, strength and conditioning is important. Get good advice though in the style of session, the number of reps, sets, what types of exercises to do. They're not all just about adding mass. Some will get you more muscle mass for sure, but if it's contributing to forward motion, it should increase your power on the bike, and that'll nullify any increase in weight that you have.
Great. Paul asks if you're going to attempt to break the record of Lionel Sanders on lemon.
Maybe 20 years ago. Lionel's amazing. I mean, I think that for those of us who love the sport, the current generation of guys are just incredible. You know, back home in Sydney, I was fortunate enough to meet Javier Gomez a couple of weeks ago. He was training in Sydney, and, you know, these guys, I just see them, they've been groomed as great athletes, and, you know, the training practices are better, the equipment's better, and I think the athletes are just better. I think Lionel will lower his own time, and I think other guys will pepper the time as well. I was amazed walking around Kona last year at the expo, just the equipment that even amateurs have now, you know, just the aerodynamic focus that's put on bikes and proper bike position as well, not just the aerodynamics of the bike, but a great position to go with it. The equipment that's available, the advancements in training and nutrition, what we know about proper recovery. Lionel's amazing. I think, what is that record, 7:44 or 7:48? I think he'll go quicker. I think he's a guy who's improving. I know his bike and run's already off the charts, but his swim's improving all the time. I think Sebastian, we haven't seen the best of Sebi. Yeah, Jan as well. I mean, it's a great generation. On the girls' side, Daniela, she'll smash a few more records as well. So I don't think you'll see me out peppering any of those times.
Michael asks, he's curious about what your race nutrition is.
Once again, that's a great question. When I was training for Kona, I would always find out what the nutrition was they were handing out on the course, and I would try and get hold of that and train on that, so my body got used to processing whatever that fuel was. I mean, you can only carry so much with you. I obviously have my preferred brands that I used to use as well, things that I felt worked well for me. At one stage I was using Goo brand, which I thought was really good. I've used a few different brands, and there's a few good ones out there. Once again, people respond differently to different things. So my nutrition was, I liked everything liquid based on race day. So my breakfast, my calorie intake would be liquid. I have a cup of coffee as well, and then sip a weak electrolyte drink leading up to the start of the race. This is for Ironman, and if I felt about half an hour out that I was craving something, I'd take half a gel, half a Goo. And then in the race, once again, I had all of my calories mixed in as liquid. So I'd have my calories mixed in with my electrolyte drink. I'd roughly have the concentration anywhere from 4 to 8%. So I'd try and have the concentration of the drinks around that. Take a lot of water, as much water as I could as well on the course. And later on the bike course, I'd have calories mixed into my electrolyte drink in powder form. You'd mix it in as a powder. The second half of the bike, I'd always carry some some gels mixed with water in a flask. I'd make the consistency. A lot of those gels and goos can be thick and hard to ingest. I would just mix 2 or 3 in a gel flask with water, so they were like the same consistency as water. I found them easy to ingest and digest. And I would always use a lot of simple sugars later in the race as well. Coke, I would drink a lot of Coke. Certainly not sitting here advocating sitting around drinking Coke, but I did use it a lot in races. I cannot think of a race I've done where I haven't used decarbonated Coke. Particularly on the marathon, my nutrition was all Coke and water usually. And nutritionists everywhere are pulling their hair out. That's what it was. That's what it was. Red Bull as well. I'd often flatten Red Bull. I mean, an athlete, I know TJ Tolson used to train around here a little bit, and one year leading up to Kona, TJ stayed with my friend TJ and Ashley stayed with Neri and I in Boulder. I trained a lot with TJ. He's a good guy, a good friend, and he was sponsored by Red Bull at the time. So we had this pallet turn up, and I just started training on it. During my long runs, I'd flatten it the day before, and yeah, I was performing well in the long run, so I took some out on race day as well that year, and seemed to work okay. So once again, nutrition's a very individual thing. I would just strongly suggest whatever it is you race on, you try it in your longer bricks, your longer runs, and there's a few general rules for whatever size you are. You have to ingest so many calories per hour. I think the things you need to think about are fuel, so calories or grams of carb per hour, electrolyte, fluid, and fluid and electrolyte, they're the 3 things. So grams of carbs or calories, fluid per hour, and electrolytes, they're the 3 things. And everybody's going to be a little different. What I did simply was, actually I read an article in a triathlon magazine written by Mark Allen, and he talked about nutrition, and he was the one where I initially got the idea to test my race day nutrition in the brick session, the longer brick session. So I just read online, basically for someone my height and weight, what the general rules were. Apparently my size was meant to ingest about 60 grams or 70 grams of carbs per hour, about 1 litre of fluid, and X milligrams of sodium or salt. I couldn't remember how much it was, but I just started right in the middle of what the ranges they gave were, and then tweaked it from there. And in the end, I never could ingest 60 grams per hour. I was much less than that. But I think that's what the whole point of practicing, and you come across a strategy that works for you. And I can honestly say too, once again, not wanting to digress, that no nutrition plan I had was ever the same. I mean, the plan was the same going in, but it was always different on race day, depending on if it was hotter or windier than expected, and also your level of fitness. When you're very, very fit, you're more efficient, so you possibly don't burn at the same rate that you would have 4 weeks before or 3 weeks before. So you need some flexibility built into you. But my race day nutrition was all fluid based.
All right, Chris asks, what are the most common signs of overtraining, and where's the line between well-trained and overtrained?
Well, I read an interesting quote once that said, I want to get this right, if you meet more than one idiot in a day, you're training too much. So basically what it's saying is, the problem's not the other people, it's you. You're tired and cranky. Once again, it's a fine line. Everybody's very individual. I think if you have, in business, you hear people talk about their KPIs, their performance indicators. If you know what your benchmarks are with your power meters and your heart rates, there's a lot of data you can get. Resting heart rate is a good one to start with, off the top of my head. But you know, when you prescribe the training, you know the parameters that you need to work within with each session, what the goal of each session is. I would suggest if you're not hitting your targets, that's a pretty good sign that you're probably fatigued. You've got to understand that the whole premise of training is overload and then recover. And when you overload, you're going to get tired, possibly going to perform or underperform a little bit. And with experience, you get to learn, but you also have to be mindful when your immune system, when your body's battling, you are susceptible to getting sick. So it is a fine line. And I can't answer that specifically other than to say, for me personally, I think one of the things I had that worked well in my favour was I could withstand a lot of training. I know speaking with Dave, whenever I'd write my Kona build, I'd show Dave, he'd say, this is too much, you're doing too much. So everybody's different. I thought I could not only withstand the training, it's not only withstanding it, but it's coming out stronger at the other end. That's the goal. And that's different for everybody. So once again, it's a trial and error. You need to go back and, I think great advice for anyone is to keep a training log. And I know there's software now you can upload your information. It's all kept up in cyberspace. So I used to do it with a handwritten book, and in fact I still do sometimes when I get into serious training. And if you go back and look, you see certain patterns that emerge, certain workloads that you're able to cope with and others that you weren't. So I would suggest that it might be worth, if you're not doing that, start doing that now. And you'll learn very quickly what workloads, but you'll know resting heart rate, I think, is the main thing. If you're checking that every morning and it's higher than it should be. I'm not a huge advocate of cancelling training when you're tired, but I think if you're not flexible within your program, you're silly. So if you are very tired and you've got some sort of threshold session planned or something, maybe it's worth rescheduling that to a time where you can hit your KPIs. So I believe that good recovery, part of that is active recovery. You know, when you think about recovery, it's about bouncing back, feeling good, freshening up. And part of recovery is delivering oxygen to the working muscles or the fatigue muscles. And so that can be enhanced by very low-level exercise. But once again, it comes back to discipline. I would never be one to miss sessions, but I would often rejig the program if I knew I couldn't hit those performance parameters that this session dictated. So I would just schedule in some easy recovery time. So I think you need to pay attention, start logging your training, and be mindful that it's okay to be flexible and rejig the training. It's not how much you do this week, how many threshold sessions you do this week, or how many strength sessions. It's how much work you get done in the whole build-up. And that's where the consistency, once again, underlies everything. And managing yourself. I'll say this, don't get sick, don't get injured. There's a rule for you. Don't get sick, don't get injured. And sometimes you need to get a little run down or a little sick to work out where the edge is. But when you get to the edge, be smart enough to pull back, have a few easier days, get strong again, and then launch back into the training.
All right, so we probably have a few thousand people watching this right now, and I imagine you get a lot, yeah. Right? We're kind of running out of time. I don't know how many questions do you have.
We have a couple more. There's one more question. Let's do one more if
One
you've
more
got one more.
question.
All right. So Craig asks, endurance training is thought to reduce testosterone levels. Is this something you've ever experienced or been tested for? And if so, is there something you would suggest to overcome it?
Once again, I'm no expert. I have had at different times blood tests, particularly when I've been up in altitude, just to see what the effect of the altitude stimulus is doing to my body. And I know people who know what levels you're supposed to be in thought I was okay. So not just in testosterone, but in all the levels that they monitored. So yeah, if it's a concern, go and see a sports doctor who knows. I would suggest once again, I'm not going to sit up here and profess to know things that I don't know. I wouldn't even know what a proper testosterone level is, other than, as I said, I've had my bloods taken a few times and I've been given the all clear. So I think testosterone is definitely equated with performance. So if it's something you've had or struggled with in the past, definitely worth getting tested. But obviously, as an endurance sport, we are subject to certain codes with medications. Obviously, with WADA, where a triathlon as a sport is subject to drug testing. So you need to make sure that whatever you take, and it's a very topical issue right now because there has been a few triathletes return positive drug tests and get suspensions. So I think you need to be mindful that as an athlete, it's each of our responsibilities to know exactly what we're ingesting, even if we do get expert advice. But do some reading up on it, and if it's something you think is impacting your performance, go and see an expert for sure.
All right, cool. So we're going to wrap this up. Thank you, Craig, for coming out here and spending time with us and answering questions for everybody on Facebook. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. You can follow Craig and Sansigo on the Twitter, on the Instagram, on the Facebook. Follow Trisports on the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, #Trisports. You get all your cool gear up on our community gallery. Any closing words?
Just want to say thanks for coming along. Thanks to everyone who watched online, and thanks to Trisports for having us. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.